j'ai décidé de vous redonner le choix de notre avenir parlementaire par le vote. Je dissous donc ce soir l'Assemblée nationale. Je signerai dans quelques instants le décret de convocation des élections législatives qui se tiendront le 30 juin pour le premier tour et le 7 juillet pour le second.
That was French President Emmanuel Macron announcing that he is dissolving Parliament and calling a snap legislative election 3 years ahead of schedule after his party took a battering in the recent European elections and the far right emerged with more seats and more support than ever before. Now this raises a question. Why would he do that? Macron is already extremely unpopular in France, and he's operating a minority government, either relying on other parties not to vote down legislation, or even governing by decree. To be clear, this is a legislative election, not a presidential election, which means his position as president is not under threat, regardless of the results, but he may find his party in an even weaker position than it is now, potentially to the point where it is no longer the largest party in the National Assembly, paving the way for Marine Le Pen and the far-right National Rally to take control of the National Assembly. With the odds stacked against him, it is truly an astonishing gamble. So why has he done it? Okay, a quick bit of context. The recent European Parliament elections in France saw the far-right National Rally top the polls with over 30% of the vote, a significant improvement on their performance at the previous European elections in 2019, while Macron's party, which is called Renaissance, and its associates, its allies, took some serious damage, seeing their share of the vote down by 8% and leaving them in a distant second. Another far-right party also chalked up 5% of the vote and will have seats in the European Parliament for the first time. In this context, Macron's decision to call a national election is baffling. The European elections have given huge momentum to the far right and set his party back significantly, and he's effectively just invited the far right to carry that momentum forward into these national elections, potentially enough to shift the balance of power and possibly even ending up in a situation with Marine Le Pen or her protégé Jordan Bardella as Prime Minister. Only Macron himself will truly know why he called this election. It seems even his own Prime Minister wasn't aware of it until the announcement was made publicly. But there are a few theories on what the strategy might be and what kind of result he might be hoping for. One theory is that he simply doesn't believe that the results seen at European level will be reflected at national level. It is true that people often vote very differently in European elections compared to national elections, hoping to give the government of the day a bit of a kicking and remind them not to get complacent. And it's certainly true that the National Rally have benefited enormously from that in European elections in the past. Their score of 31% at this European election is much higher than they've ever achieved in a national poll. Macron's calculation may therefore be that in the context of an important national election, with the far right on the march and far-right government seemingly a real possibility, people will treat their vote a bit more seriously and be less likely to protest vote in favour of the National Rally and, he hopes, prefer his party instead. It is possible that moderate French voters will react to the recent European election results with horror and turn out in their masses to reject the far right, possibly in favour of his party, but it's a huge gamble. Macron may also be hoping to create a Republican front. This refers to a situation where different parties of significantly different wide-ranging views temporarily put their differences aside and band together to back one candidate or one party in order to fend off the far right. The most famous example of this is the 2002 presidential election, where Jacques Chirac faced off against Jean-Marie Le Pen, who is Marine Le Pen's father and was significantly more right-wing than she is. In spite of Chirac's immense unpopularity among left-wing voters, they were left with a simple choice. Back the man you dislike to defeat the man you despise. Vote for the crook, not the Nazi, was the rallying cry. And it worked. Left-wing voters lent their support to the right in order to block the far right and defeat them by a landslide. Now, it's worth mentioning that this strategy has been significantly less effective in more recent elections, with disaffected voters preferring to just not vote at all, rather than hold their nose and vote for, say, Macron, in order to block the far right, but maybe he's hoping this time it will be different. The National Rally have just won the European elections by a significant margin and have never looked closer to taking power in Paris than they do now. And that may set alarm bells ringing among moderate and left-wing voters right across the country, leading them to turn out en masse to vote for any party that isn't the far right. So there are a few factors at play here. For Macron to win this election, or at the very least for the National Rally to not win it, Macron needs to rely on a perfect storm of the National Rally continuing their trend of underperforming in domestic elections, combined with the fear of a far-right government now being a real possibility, leading to people to turn out en masse to vote for a moderate party, even one they greatly dislike, for no other reason than to block the far right. It's an extremely risky strategy, and one that in my opinion is unlikely to work. But what if Macron knows it's not going to work? What if he's actually preparing for the National Rally to take power? Okay, hear me out. It sounds insane, because frankly it is insane, but it is a possibility. Macron may have called this election knowing full well that a National Rally victory is a very plausible outcome. That would result in what is known in France as cohabitation, where the president and the prime minister come from different political parties, leading to a division of executive power. Macron might be hoping to demonstrate two different things in this scenario. First, that he will do everything he can to stop the far right from passing legislation, even if Marine Le Pen or Jordan Bardella end up as prime minister. And secondly, that people will see a far-right government for what it is, an absolute disaster, and reject it decisively at future elections. A sort of short-term pain for long-term gain scenario. If that's the strategy, it's an extremely irresponsible strategy, but it could be on his mind. So, where are we at the moment? Well, progressive parties were in a bit of a bad shape after their electoral coalition collapsed last year, and they all stood separately in the European elections and saw their vote share split right across. But they're obviously very acutely aware of the real threat of a National Rally-led government, and so they have banded together to form what they're calling the New Popular Front. It's rather like the previous NUPES coalition that was created for the last legislative election, and will see centre-left to left-wing parties band together to stand joint candidates under the banner of the Nouveau Front Populaire and put together a joint programme for government if they can be the largest grouping after the upcoming election. The left were extremely efficient, putting their coalition together within days of the election being called. The same cannot be said for the right. The mainstream right has traditionally been represented by the Republican Party, although they've been increasingly flirting with the far right in recent years, and they made that very explicit when their leader Éric Ciotti announced that he was seeking a similar electoral alliance to the one on the left, but on the right with the National Rally, which caused absolute chaos in the party. It led to him being ousted by his party, at which point he then locked himself in his office, claiming that his dismissal was illegal, and that was then backed up by a court which overturned his dismissal. Absolute dumpster fire. And for those who find that Marine Le Pen isn't quite extreme enough, there's Éric Zemmour and his party Reconquest. I'm assuming you have to say it like that because there's an exclamation mark in their name. So anyway, Reconquest had 5 MEPs elected in the European elections on the 9th of June, and 4 of those have already been sacked by Éric Zemmour from the party and will now sit as independents after they failed to form an electoral alliance with the National Rally, and there's now a huge blame game going on about who supported it, who didn't support it, who failed the negotiations, who didn't. It's just a big mess. The 3 main blocs that have emerged as the key contenders in this election are pretty much the same ones as we had in the last legislative election. The New Popular Front on the left, Ensemble in the centre, which is a coalition of Macron's own party and other centre-to-centre-right parties that support him, and on the far right, the National Rally, who are not in any electoral alliance, at the time of recording, but are in a very strong position following their performance in the European elections. And it's possible, or even likely, that Macron could end up with a prime minister and a cabinet from a completely different party than his own, leading to chaos in government for the next few years. So what is the National Assembly likely to look like after July the 7th?
I don't know.
Recent polling suggests a slim lead for the National Rally, with the New Popular Front on the left close behind in second place, and the centre way behind them in third place. And then behind them, you have the Republicans, and of course, Reconquest! But there's still a couple of weeks to go in this campaign, and we're in uncharted territory here. I've already had to rewrite this video several times over because things keep changing and developing so quickly. It might even be outdated by the time it goes up. But at the time of recording, that's where we are, and it leaves us poised for a fascinating couple of weeks. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something interesting today. If you've seen me around before, you may have noticed that I haven't uploaded in quite a long time, and this video is taken quite a different direction to my previous videos, and that's what this channel is going to be going forward. A political news / analysis / commentary channel. I'll have another video coming up soon on the upcoming UK general election, so feel free to subscribe if that interests you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and a thumbs up is always appreciated as it helps to spread the word of the dramatic return of this channel. Thanks once again for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye bye!